This is all about Angat Water Transmission Improvement Project, or OUTIP. This is to augment for the water that is needed for Metro Manila.
Definitely, we have also similar problem of drinking water problem in Karachi, and I may propose to the government for the project like this.
The tunneling that is for 6.4 kilometers from Bigti up to Ipoh. To bring the water from Ipoh up to Bigti Basin. The conveyance that is for the connection from the tunnel going to the intersection of aqueduct, the basin. And the third one is the outlet, the entrance from Ipoh Dam towards the tunnel.
Marvelous.
Очень было приятно сегодня ездить такие объекты. Это хорошо, когда своими глазами все увидишь.
This machine particularly, this is a very new invention for us.
As an economist, we normally in the office, it is beneficial for me to visit the actual happening in the projects. Actually, we study and how to finance the projects.
Because you know, this is a very practical situation here and we are observing it. Definitely, it is very useful for us.
Это было еще интереснее. Заметил, что вода падает через туннель.
Actually, beneficial both.
У нас тоже вода сейчас рекой, но вдоль реки имеется отдельный канал ирригационный. То есть я хочу сказать, что отстаивается воды в большой бассейн, потом подается на маленький бассейн.
Really, it is a wonderful project.
Results, resilience, and recovery. Get these 3 R's in project design and implementation, and we get quality. But there are roadblocks: pandemic, climate risks, and rising inequality. Find out from project frontliners how gains are made and lessons are learned in navigating toward an inclusive and green recovery at the Forum on Successful Project Design and Implementation on November 9th to 11th at successfulprojects.adb.org. Welcome to the second part of the session, Innovation and Resilience. Our facilitator for this session is Ms. Emma Fan, the Director for Public Management, Financial Sector, and Regional Cooperation Division in ADB's East Asia Department. Over to you, Emma.
Excellencies, ladies, gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to session 4 of the Forum on Successful Project Design and Implementation, Navigating Toward an Inclusive and Green Recovery. Today's session is entitled Innovation and Resilience. During this session, we will present 2 case studies from Nepal and Tonga, respectively. These 2 projects will illustrate innovative approaches by ADB and the governments to weather the impact of COVID-19 and deliver results under very trying conditions. This session will also look at the challenges associated with climate change, fragile and conflict-affected situations, and small island developing states. My name is Emma Fan. I'm the Director of Public Management, Financial Sector, and Regional Cooperation Division at ADB's East Asia Department. I'm pleased to be the moderator today. We have 4 excellent panelists to share their experiences on 2 projects: Tonga Renewable Energy Project and Nepal Tanahu Hydropower Project. For the Tonga Renewable Energy Project, we're delighted to have Mr. Nikonasi Funua, Acting Chief Executive Officer, Tonga Power Limited, and Mr. Ranishka Wimanasna, Energy Specialist from the Energy Division, the Pacific Department at ADB. Nick Nasi is an electrical and electronics engineer. He also holds a master's degree in business administration from the Nagoya University of Commerce and Business in Japan. Nikonasi has worked for 10 years with the electricity utility in Tonga. He has rich experience in project management and strategic business development. He has headed the engineering division of the utility and currently is the acting CEO. With strong business and engineering skills, Nikonasi's passion is in developing a sustainable energy industry. He also has a particular focus on nurturing talents within the industry. Ultimately, Nikonasi's objectives are to see and realize the differences that a sustainable energy industry can make in people's everyday lives. Our second panelist for the Tonga project is Ranishka from ADB. He's an energy specialist based in the Pacific Sub-Regional Office in Suva, Fiji, or SPSO. He's the project team leader. Before moving to Fiji, Ranishka managed the energy sector portfolio at ADB's Sri Lanka resident mission. He has 18 years of professional experience, mainly on energy sector development and project management. He holds a master's degree in energy planning and policy from the University of Technology in Sydney, Australia. Our second set of panelists is for the Nepal Tanahu Hydropower Project. First, I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Pradeep Thiki, Deputy Managing Director at the Nepal Electricity Authority. Mr. Pradeep holds a master's degree in water resource engineering from the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology and a Bachelor of Engineering from the National Institute of Technology, Tiruchirappalli, Mr. Pradeep is an avid traveler and an advocate for environmental protection and social safeguards. Our second panelist on the Nepal Tanahu hydropower project is Mr. Aaron Dennis. Aaron is a social development specialist at the Energy Division, South Asia Department, ADB. Prior to joining ADB, he worked with the Compliance Advisor Ombudsman for the IFC and MEGA, as well as with a private consultancy specializing in indigenous peoples' development. As a practitioner, Aaron is interested in leveraging emerging technologies to foster inclusive and equitable project design, promote transparency and accountability, and enable results-oriented performance and service delivery for clients and communities. We will now move to the presentation and the discussions for the first project, the Tonga Renewable Energy project. This project was approved on 11th March 2019. It supports Tonga's rapid transition from its heavy reliance on imported fossil fuels for power generation to clean and renewable energy resources that are low carbon and climate resilient. Today, the panelists will share their experience on innovative approaches to ensure project completion despite the outbreak of COVID-19. So over to you, Nick Nasi and Ranishka. You have the floor.
Thank you, Emma. Let me start with the presentation and then it will be followed by Nicolasi. Thank you very much for the introduction. If anyone wants to find a project which has impacted from COVID, this is definitely one of the projects which will be highlighted because this project had so many issues because of the COVID. Though we talk about what worked mainly, there are so many other things which did not work, which we may not be highlighting today because we are presenting only the positive side of it and how we manage it. As Emma mentioned, this project, Tonga Renewable Energy, we call as TREP. This was approved in 2019 in this beautiful for this beautiful island of Tonga. This project was approved as part of the Pacific Renewable Energy Financing Facility. Tonga is a beautiful country with about 105,000 population and about a very small system in technical terms, roughly about 25 megawatt, 26 megawatts. The project impact, expected impact was the reduced dependency on the imported fossil fuels for the power generation. The outcome was because the fossil fuel dominant generation, the expected outcome was to have the expanded access from clean and affordable energy, which is generally renewable energy. And the project had four main outputs. Number one is the battery energy storage systems, we call it BESS, in the main island of Tonga Tapu. Two of those systems. One is about 5 megawatt, 2.5 megawatt hours for grid stability. If there is any change in the renewable energy generation, how to manage that. So that's the first part. And the second BESS was for to store the energy which is generated during the day through the solar and to use it during the evening and the late nights. So there were two components under the output one, and output two was about grid-connected renewable energy generation in Ewa and Wau Islands. These are island groups beyond Tonga Tapu. And output three was renewable-based hybrid mini-grids for outer islands. There are many outer islands attached to the other main islands. So these are for the main small outer islands. The last output was the capacity building, obviously. The project, like any other project, was moving smoothly before COVID. And this had achieved remarkable progress. Almost all the contracts were awarded and the implementation was ongoing without any issue. And the project was on schedule to complete towards the end of last year, and some components in the middle of this year. But obviously, as everyone knows, the COVID happened and the unusual circumstances evolved. Border restrictions and the travel restrictions in the Pacific was very unusual, unlike the other places. Everywhere it was unusual initially, but in Pacific it was very unusual. Now, if you are to travel to Tonga, you need to stay in quarantine for about 2 weeks in New Zealand, and then catch a repatriation flight, which is very rare, to go to Tonga, and then stay there for 3 weeks in isolated quarantine, and then you go to the ground. So obviously, this had impacted the project. And because there are not enough people who can travel back and forth, the construction slowed down because of the special technical staff. Construction workers were not available. Like which happened anywhere else, the supply chain systems were disturbed. Because of that, the equipment delivery, which is required for these projects, were delayed, and which are not coming as we scheduled. The contractor staff and the consultants travel, what I mentioned previously, did not take place. It was impossible to travel to Tonga. Only the citizens were able to travel. Anyone else need to wait and then get government clearance, and it was nearly impossible to happen. Despite all of that, there was no way that we can stop the project. Project had to continue somehow. We were really worried if the contractor, especially for the battery energy storage systems, which the contractor was based in Europe, they have already recovered about 90% of the contractual price, because the designs, initial construction, equipment delivery was already paid. What was pending is the last 10 to 15% of final payment. We were worried that the contractor could run away without completing. But somehow we had to continue with the project. The approach we implemented to overcome these challenges was, number one, the civil construction and the equipment installation, which are usually easy and can be managed by the local staff. We went ahead with the local contractors. The contractor mobilized subcontractors, so the civil construction and the equipment installation continued. When we received the equipment, same local subcontractors was able to install the equipment, some of the equipment, not everything. And things like factory acceptance tests, which are conducted before delivering any of the major equipment, were conducted remotely with the help of sometimes the construction supervision consultants, representatives in those countries in Europe, representing the utility. So it was a combination of some representative representing in Europe and some conducted virtually. And then there was a time that we were worried, like I mentioned, whether the contractor would run away. And we requested contractor to provide a cost if they are to mobilize the team of technical staff for the commissioning of battery energy storage systems. What was expected was about 8 technical staff to be mobilized, and spending 7 weeks in isolated quarantine for them was not an option. Though they can provide the cost, but they were not willing to provide the cost because they were not willing to have this opportunity lose for the other projects they have. So there was no way that the contractor was going to send the staff. But then we somehow, through discussions, especially with the help of TPL, which is the implementing agency, and the PMU and the supervision consultants, with numerous discussions and meetings, there was an agreement for remote commissioning. One key of agreeing to this was to agree on a rates-based approach, where moving away from the remaining 10 to 15% cost-based, but onto a rates-based. If the rates are higher, that we would allow them to have these paid. So that was the approach, and finally we had an agreement on how to commission the battery energy storage systems. Now, things which I did not highlight previously. Picture looks very rosy, but on the background, we had a time pressure, because as part of the project, there was a requirement to have IPPs developing renewable energy and connecting to the grid, because the battery energy storage systems were developed in order for the renewable energy to be absorbed to the system. As part of this project, from the private sector, there was a 6 megawatt solar PV project ongoing. And if they had completed before the battery energy storages are in place, the TPL, which is the utility, would have to pay the IPPs without utilizing the energy. So we had a time pressure. The contractor's concerns for cost with remote commissioning, which was de-risked by a rates-based approach. Now, if the contractor doesn't come and commission, there was a warranty concern, whether the warranty would be valid, because the contractor would not provide the warranty. That was another concern. And how to manage the quality assurance, and the supervision consultants fantastically did this remotely with the acceptance of everyone. Now, the PMU played a role which is conflicting. Why do I say that? One of the PMU staff, grid integration specialist, who was based in New Zealand, we got him down to Tonga with the approval of the government. Government supported bringing him to Tonga. Now, he acted as the front line or the interface for the contractor to do the commissioning. On the other hand, also safeguarding the implementing agency's requirements. And so this was conflicting but supportive role of the PMU. PMU role was actually the key for the success. And the Tonga Power Limited, which is the implementing agency's involvement in certain activities which the subcontractors couldn't do, like medium voltage cabling and so on and so forth. So this was the story behind the story. Let me hand over to Nicolasi, the acting CEO of the TPL, to run through the details of how we did this. Nick.
Thank you very much, Renishka. And moving right along with the presentation, and in terms of concluding the last few slides here that Renishka has covered the context so well to start off with. As Renishka mentioned, some of the highlights when it came to the factory acceptance testing and the quality control. Fortunately, a certain portion of the battery energy storage system factory acceptance testing, the construction supervision consultants were actually able to be there for. As you can see in this picture here, one of the construction supervision consultant engineers was in Spain for the factory acceptance testing of the battery energy storage systems. There was also a portion of the contract where we were unable to send any representatives to Europe to take part in any of the factory acceptance testing. So for a lot of the customized equipment and solutions, one of the key lessons is that we obviously still would prefer to have representation there, although we were able to do a lot of remote attendance and witnessing of the factory acceptance testing. But obviously it's still much better to have somebody physically present for certain aspects of the customized solution that you generally cannot see when you are there remotely. In terms of delivery on site, Renishka has already covered off and mentioned the use of local subcontractors. Fortunately, with the major portion of the contracts for this project, a lot of it is plug and play from an electrical perspective. So large containerized systems that were installed on site. A lot of the civil construction work, there was fairly competent local subcontractors that were able to progress the civil construction portion of the project. And this also represented, although a huge challenge because of COVID-19, a great opportunity as well for local subcontractors to be given these opportunities to really be involved in the project and progress the project from a local resourcing perspective. You can see here in this picture, Keith Scholes, who is the project management unit grid integration specialist, working very closely with a team of the local electrical installation contractors in terms of looking at the works that required to be completed on site prior to commissioning of the systems. So also fulfilling one of the key outputs of this project, which is capacity building. This was a really hands-on and on-the-job approach to capacity building for local technical expertise. Renishka also mentioned the fact that it was a conflicting situation and the fact that we were only really able to get a couple of New Zealand-based team members over here into Tonga due to the COVID-19 restrictions and border closures to assist with the actual physical completion of the project. As things would turn out, that was reduced back to one person who's pictured here in this picture. But fortunately, there was, so far there's been sufficient local resource to be able to provide the support. And with the remote assistance from Europe, we are able to progress the project to a position now where we're in the hot commissioning phase and final testing procedures for the first battery energy storage system, which is the grid stabilizing battery. Next slide, please. So yes, so the success story, I think, behind this project, Renishka mentioned, is always challenges, but there are also always some success factors to be aware of and to hold on to. Is that we have been able to commission the grid stability BESS, is currently operating, and we are prepared for offtake of further solar capacity, 6 megawatts of solar capacity that's it's also in its final stages of construction and will be commissioned within the month as well. From the lessons that we've learned from the commissioning of the last grid stabilizing BESS, we are able to move on confidently to the load shifting BESS and continue with the commissioning of the largest load shifting BESS. Our goal is to complete that within the year as well. Development of the local labor capacity, as mentioned, has been a fantastic opportunity, a silver lining, I suppose, to COVID-19. We are a very remote island at the best of times. It's very difficult to travel here and to be able to implement projects. And with border restrictions, it has made it nigh on impossible. So it has been a huge challenge for the local labor and the local capacity to be able to implement these projects. But at the same time, it's also represented a great opportunity. And I think, from that opportunity, local capacity has really tried to grasp that with two hands and progress to the best of our abilities, and for the sake of the outputs and goals of the project. Although there has been some significant slippage, but timeframes for the project have been well and large maintained. with the communication and what we've been able to achieve with the contractors, we've been able to push through and achieve more than we probably expected at the outset when considering the challenges presented by COVID-19. And overall, we look forward to continuing to achieve the targets of the Tonga Renewable Energy Project. Next slide, please. So there are lessons. It hasn't all been smooth sailing when it comes to working more remotely than we already were. The flexibility and the support from the ADB has been huge in being able to address these additional challenges represented by this global pandemic. The move from a strict contract to a rates-based approach when it came to the remote commissioning was a significant milestone in allowing us to be able to progress the project to the stage that is at the moment. Fantastic communication and collaboration between the contractors and the project management unit, ourselves, as well as the construction supervision consultants, has been ongoing and a significant and important factor in our ability to progress and get remote commissioning done to the stage that it is at the moment. We also have to mention the fact that the facilities to enable the remote works has been a learning curve, a steep learning curve, something that was not really foreseen at the outset of the project. But fortunately, a majority of the infrastructure was in place to allow that to happen. The flexibility of the contract and the mechanisms for force majeure events was also an important lesson for future consideration. I don't think many had considered the impact of a pandemic in these sorts of contracts in the past, but I'm sure moving forward it will be most certainly something that's significantly more important in those considerations. We had quite a good allocation of contingency when it came to the schedule of these projects, and we've worked hard to try and maintain the timelines to the best of our abilities. And also the supply chains, I think that's also something that we're continuing to learn from, even up till today, with the longer term impacts of COVID-19 and what we are experiencing in terms of delays in shipping and the sustainability of the supply chain overall is something that we will continue to monitor and consider moving forward. So those are some of the key lessons that we've learned from this journey that we've been going through with the Tonga Renewable Energy Project. So with that, I believe that we are probably close to time, and I'll hand it back to Emma. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Niknasi and Ranishka, for that excellent presentation. I think what you have outlined really resonate so well with so many of us. I was struck by what you said, Ranishka, that despite the challenges, the project must go on. And by what you said, Niknasi, that given the constraints, we actually created opportunities, especially in developing the local capacity by local contractors. So excellent presentation. Thank you very much. We will now move to the questions and answers session for this project. I received one question from the link. I hope that is in relation to this project, which is from Shahzad Rezvi. His question is that land acquisition and resettlement and rehabilitation cost was not included. And is it because the safeguard policy statements to be exclude that land acquisition and related costs? I guess this question is more about the general safeguard policy statements, not so much about this project, I suppose. Is that correct, Ranishka?
I would assume so, Emma. But I guess I can probably answer from ADB's perspective of the safeguard policy statement, which actually restrict us not doing any projects without the safeguards of the people in terms of social as well as environment being considered. So one major requirement under the safeguard policy statement is that we cannot have any physical or economic displacement for the people. We have to minimize. If we can't avoid it, then there should be compensation. So in this project, fortunately, the two locations for the BESS is actually the government land, which is TPS land. But for the outer island projects, there have been other lands which owned by the affected parties. But we have allocated roughly about $3 million for the compensation and the land acquisition if it is required, which was part of the TPL contribution. So overall, what I would like to say is under the safeguard policy statements, these costs are considered in the project design and also during the implementation.
Thank you for that helpful response. I think we still have time for probably about 2 questions. You mentioned that this project has involved close collaboration, coordination between various parties, ADB, the government, the contractors, local, international, PMU, and so forth. In your experience, were there any hiccups, difficulties in the communication collaboration?
Nicholas, would you like to take it off?
Yeah, sure, Renishka. Yeah. So it has generally been quite good. I think probably a good example is Renishka, who has been working so closely with us. We unfortunately have not had a chance to actually physically meet Renishka in person due to COVID-19, and he hasn't had the opportunity to visit us on our shores here in Tonga. That face-to-face time, you know, there's no real replacement for it, although we're all here on a forum, all from different corners of the world. It is also always a bit different and a bit more helpful to be able to sit across the table from somebody and discuss projects and really focus on what needs to be done. In saying that, we haven't let that stop us in terms of progressing this project. And the dedication from the team to be working at all sorts of different hours of the day to be able to have those conversations and to make those discussions happen at the right time has been critical in our ability to progress the project and get it to the stage that it is at the moment. So that's a real credit to the team and not allowing that those challenges to really get us down. I think working remotely as sometimes, particularly during the commissioning phase, we did also experience some levels of, you know, the distance kind of having some complacency creep in at certain times. But we had to remind the team of the challenge and what we were trying to achieve, and that allowed us to be able to progress and get past those specific challenges. So yeah, the collaboration and particularly the communication has been huge and a very important effort, particularly from the PMU, the construction supervision consultants and the contractors, as well as the ADB team as well.
Thank you very much, Nick Nasi, for
Emma,
that insightful response.
Sure.
I think,
Emma, if I may add just one point for that discussion.
Yes.
We forgot to mention that this project is actually co-financed by the Green Climate Fund and the government of Australia, the DFAT. And the communication with them and the support and the collaborative role played by both of the co-financiers is also immense. I mean, we just see the project being commissioned, but then behind the scene, there are so many So those two are also part of the game.
Excellent. I think a partnership is really a cornerstone of this project and many others. So we received another question from the audience. The question is, what are the lessons learned from the virtual FAT instead of a physical one? And what are the key advantages and disadvantages of the remote project installation work? Also, how did you manage the cost variation? I guess, did you experience cost overruns and time overruns and so forth? Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. So I can address maybe the FAT aspects, and Renishka, I'll pass it over to you on the contract and cost variations. So the lessons learned from between the virtual FAT and the physical FAT, as I mentioned in the presentation, is that there were certain customized solutions that we certainly still maintain that a physical presence at the factory acceptance testing would be hugely advantageous still, and we would probably still prefer to have that opportunity. From the virtual factory acceptance testing, really, there is no replacement for the physical presence there, but we were able to have good recording and actually collect a lot of useful training material for down the track as well when it came to the virtual FAT. So both have some challenges and also some advantages. And similarly, when it came to the remote project installation works, I mentioned the need to work at all sorts of hours. Europe and Tonga are basically on around about 10 to 12 hours difference. So that means a team over here working all night, and possibly sometimes a team in Europe also working throughout the night. Apart from that, the advantages, as I mentioned, is the capacity building for the local contractors of the remote installation works, the recording and the ability to maintain a lot of very useful information in terms of the remote project installation. They had to conduct training remotely for part of the commissioning process. As I mentioned, that is a good opportunity to collect a lot of training material for further down the track. So those are probably some of the ones that I've just rattled off the top of my head without going through it too thoroughly. I'll leave the last part there for Renishka about the cost variations.
Thanks, Nicholas. Yes, so about how we manage the costs of the remote commissioning, as I mentioned during the presentation, we initially requested the contractor to provide a total cost if they are to send their full technical team, which they did not. But then through the discussions, we requested them to send a costing proposal for the remote commissioning, including developing a prototype in Europe and then having these two connected. So they provided the costing proposal, and the PMU and the TPL actually gone through it rigorously and then came up with the agreed the costing. And so ADB was also open for that approach. And then we looked at the costing, and then we found out if you actually reduce the costing for the physical commissioning, this would be in par with the original total cost. We had no issues in approving, even if it was above the original costing, because this is an unforeseen condition. Since we were open about it, we were able to approve. And so everyone benefited, the contractor, ADB, and the beneficiaries, which is the country, the government of Tonga. Because we wanted to be open, because this is the largest battery energy storage system ever installed in Pacific as of now. And this is the second utility scale battery energy storage system after the cooks. So we really wanted to see the end of this project commissioned as soon as possible. So we were open about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the excellent presentation and the responses to questions. We have some more questions, but we can come back to the questions later. In the interest of time, we will now move to the second case study, which is on the Nepal Tanahu hydropower project. This project was designed to expand access to clean energy in Nepal by developing a 140 megawatt hydropower plant located on the Seti River in Tanahu district. The project builds the medium-sized plant with water storage facilities and a transmission system. It also supports rural electrification and the community development in the area and assists the government on reforms and the restructuring of the national utility, the Nepal Electricity Authority. So we have two panelists, as I just introduced, Mr. Pradip Tiki and Aaron. Unfortunately, Aaron was not able to join, so I will just now pass the floor to Mr. Pradip. Pradip, you are muted. Please turn on your mic.
Yes. So good evening, good afternoon to everybody. As Aaron could not join this session, so I will make the presentation on behalf of Aaron. The presentation was prepared by Aaron, so I'll just try to explain on behalf of him. And afterwards, I will add some more of my experience in this project and some lessons learned during the implementation of the project. So can you go to the slide, please? Yes, thank you. So first, I will just give some brief background of this Tanahu hydropower projects. As all of you know that Nepal is very rich in terms of hydropower potential. The country has about 43,000 megawatt of economically viable potential, hydropower potential, but the country has only explored 2,000 megawatt by today. And most of these hydropower projects are run-of-the-river types. We have only one hydropower system with a storage capacity, that is the Kulekhani hydropower projects, having the installed capacity of 106 megawatt. So because of this dominance of the run-of-the-river projects, we have the single unbalance of energy. This year we have the spare energy during the wet season, and in the meantime, we will have the shortfall of energy during the dry season. So in order to balance the seasonal energy requirement as well as the energy security, the government has given the priority for development of storage type hydropower projects. Under this scenario, the Tanahu hydropower projects with the installed capacity of 140 megawatt, that is under implementation phase, and also the big storage projects, Durkosi hydropower projects of installed capacity 635, that is under planning for the future development. So this Tanahu hydropower projects is being financed by the three donors, the EIDB, European Investment Bank, and the JICA. The loan agreements have been concluded in 2013. It is very long back, but because of the many complexity in the procurement process, especially with regard to the package one contract and the constructing service, the project has been delayed significantly. Actually, we have three packages in this project. The first package is the construction of the dam, and it's a package one. The package two is a waterway, powerhouse, and the related equipment. And package three is a transmission line project. But unfortunately, once we have concluded the contract, we have to terminate the contract of package one. And we again have to do rebidding, and that also could not succeed. So because of that, the contractors could only mobilize this year, the package one contractors, However, the package 2 and package 3 contractors have been mobilized since the year of 2020, and they have been working at the site right now. So at this moment, the project has achieved the financial progress of about 30% and the physical progress of about 26% right now. So this project is a big dam project in Nepal. It has environmental and social concerns, and EADB has classified this project as a A class under environmental and social safeguard issues. So as per the EADB safeguard policy, we have tried our best to minimize the involuntary resettlement and when we designed the projects, because we have reduced the dam height. Originally, the dam height was planned for 160 meters. Later on, we reduced it to 140 meters in order to lessen the impact to the environmental and the social point of view. And also, as per the EADB policy and also by the EIA approved by the government of Nepal, we have to improve the standards of living of the displaced poor and other vulnerable groups. In the meantime, we also have to take care of the indigenous people, their social and cultural values also. So that is under EADB's safeguard policy and the indigenous people plan. Can you move to the next slide, please? Yes, so I have already explained about the projects. This is the project with the installed capacity of 140 megawatt. The project will generate about 585.7 gigawatt hour of energy in a year. And actually the project will affect 547 households. Out of them, 84 will be physically displaced. And in addition to that, some 100 people who will also be impacted. The next big project we are planning is a Dutkoshi Hydropower project. It has 220 meter high concrete rockfill dam. It has an installed capacity of 630 megawatt. It will impact 1,000 households. Out of that, 300 households will be physically displaced. Can we move to the next slide, please? So this is the picture of the project site when we started a consultation with the local indigenous people. And now I will try to explain about the challenges and issues we face during the implementation of the projects. So first, as per the government requirement, the EIA of the project was approved in the year 2009. And after the requirement of the EIB, the EIA addendum was prepared in the year 2012. And again, we did the supplementary EIA in order to increase the capacity from 127 megawatt to 140 megawatt. Similarly, the RIPP was prepared in the year 2012 and which was updated in the year 2019. And the land acquisition process was started in the year 2017 as per the Nepal government's Land Acquisition Act. The Compensation Determination Committee, chaired by the Chief District Officer, formed the subcommittee to assess the land conditions which we are going to acquire. The subcommittee visited almost all the land parcels at the site and consulted with the affected people. And finally, they came up with the compensation rate of the land based on the market value, the transition status, and also with the government rates, applicable government rates. So in the meantime, the project has done all detailed measurement survey of the property and also the census survey. The land valuation was completed. The benefit sharing of the natural resources were discussed during the time, and also action plans and legal recognition were, customary rights were discussed during the period. And the concern was that whether the government compensation determination was adequate or not. That was a major issue to be discussed. But in our case, out of the 547 affected households, already 95% of the households have accepted the compensation amount. So there are only the 15 households who have made complaint to the EADB and the EIB. And both EADB, OSPF, and CM of EIB have been facilitating for this to resolve this process. And from the project side, we are assisting at our best to resolve this the issues raised by the complainants by the collaborative resolution process. So apart from this directly impact, the project is also going to have some impacts on the cultural sites regarding like the cremation places, suspension bridges, and also 2 permanent bridges. So that has to be restored by the projects. So can we move to the next slide? Yes. So these are some photographs taken during the discussion with the local indigenous people, and also when when the complainants have made the complaints to the EADB and EIB. So we try to resolve this by the collaboration resolution process. The process is still going on, and we hope that this will be concluded in near future. And the next, yes. So after this complaint has come to the projects, the EADB and EADB OS has been facilitating to solve the problem. And EADB has recently completed all mappings of the project area, also the mapping of the scarce site and wherever the cultural values. So they have done the drone survey. The survey data has been digitized, and also prepared the maps to find out the possible impacts on those lands. Next slide, please. Yeah, so once this survey has been completed and the map has been prepared, then we went for the spectral data analysis, and this has been much helpful for us to identify the buffer zone, the flood and the landslide prone areas of the project. So that is very helpful for us. Next. After this spectral data analysis, I think these are some of the programs that we are going to use for analyzing this and for the analysis of this spectral data. So that Lasmith, GeoNode, and Observable are some of the programs that the EADB and we are going to plan to analyze the spectral data. So this will help us to make the decision making, and also the capacity for data-driven reporting in coming days. Next. So this prototype system for project data has been also prepared for a Hydropower project. I think this is a very good approach before we implement the project. So we have the all spectral data, and that could be shown to the all stakeholders, to resolve the issues before coming to us. So this is also the model the project had prepared in case of Hydropower projects. It has covered almost all the aspects, starting from the budget, from the policies and procedures, tools and technology, all stakeholders, and the government requirement. So these have been all put in one system. Next. So while we learning from the Tanahu experience and using it as a lesson for the Hydropower projects, so we think that we need some technical assistance resource from the EADB during the bridging period for the during the bridging period of the implementation, and also we need some process for the data, procuring data and software, and also the main problem we are facing right now is finding the right person for these social and environmental safeguard issues. From Tanahu experience, we have established the ESMU, Environmental and Social Monitoring Unit, within the project, but we have difficulty in finding the right person to continue in that unit, and that has affected us to carry out most of the social and safeguard mitigation measures. So that has the main concern with the affected people. So in order not to happen, so if EADB can assist us to find the right person and select the right person through the TA process. Thank you. So this, I think, this is the presentation from the Aaron. So apart from that, I will just highlight some of the lessons we learned and way forward from my side. I think we have some still time, yeah, Iman?
Yes, you can finish the lessons.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe quickly, yeah.
Yeah. So what we have lesson learned while implementing these Tanahu projects. So first thing is that though Tanahu has done many household surveys and data collection during the preparation of RIPP and updated RIPP and EIS stage, we could not structure those data in a well-established format. So in order to assess the socio-economic status of the projects. So next is that though we have done many regular consultation and discussion with the affected people, the shortcoming was that the record keeping and the minutes of those consultations were missing. So that has also affected us to go ahead in the coming in the nowadays. And Tanahu project has established the project implementation center in the project area to disseminate the information regarding the projects to all the stakeholders. As the information was mainly provided in English and Nepali language, the national language, so there were some complaints from the local people, local indigenous people, to have those information in their own local language. So later on, we started giving them our information in the local language also. So that also helped us to address some of those grievances. And we have also established local constitutive forums in all affected municipalities and the rural municipalities. But because of this COVID effect, so this local constitutive forums could not function in a very effective way. So that has also made us some issues while addressing the grievances from the affected people. So I think for the way forward for developing storage type of projects, I have some few words. First, that we need to have some adequate prior consultation with the affected people and indigenous people with the proper minutes and records keeping, so that we shouldn't have any disputes during the actual implementation of the projects. So in case of Dudkoshi, I think we have already started the process of YAPI, that pre, prior, and informative consent as advice from the EIV. So that process should help us to have the consultation, have the consent before we implement the projects. So next issue is not only the data collection and household survey, we need to structure those data in a well-format manner so that we can carry out the socio-economic assessment of the affected people. And we should use the modern mapping techniques and also this spatial data analysis to have the better ideas about the project location, projects, buffer zone area, the landslide prone area, and the flood prone areas to carry out some our preventive measures. So these are the things we have. We should take care of during the implementation of the storage type projects. So if you have some question, then I would be pleased to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pradeep, for that comprehensive and very informative presentation. And implementing infrastructure projects are difficult even in the best times, let alone now, which is the COVID has added to the difficulties. But very happy to see that you are using technology and other things to address the challenges. We have some questions from the audience. One question is really, what new safe measures should be in place to prevent people from resettling in the project areas? Could you please respond to this question, Pradeep?
Can you just repeat the question?
The question is, there's this project area, the people were resettled. What ways should you adopt to prevent people from coming back to the project areas and to settle there again? to live there again?
Once we construct the dam, this will have most of this area are under the inundation. So once the dam is completed, this area will be inundated. So there is no possibility that they should come back to their sites. So as far as their demands and their things, I think they all prefer for the cash compensation instead of the line for line. So we make the cash compensation to all of them, and until we construct the dam, we allow them to cultivate those lines. But once the dam is complete, the area will be inundated by. So there is no possibility for them to come back and cultivate again.
Thank you very much. I guess this is also determined by the nature of the project. So we have also a question is, you talked about the spatial information system. So how can technology like this and others be used to support evidence-based communications with the communities?
I think this is a very technical questions, and actually Aaron is involved in this, so he should be answered in a good way. But as far as I know that, actually first we carried out the drone survey of the project area. So once we have this information, the spatial data, then we made all the data in this system, and then we have these some softwares developed by the ADB to incorporate all socio-economic data and all in the one system, so that we don't need to keep all records in the different files and different sources. So that one systems will help us to collect all the information in one system.
Yes, that's an excellent idea. You also talked about the ADB TAs and so forth in supporting the Nepal Electricity Authority to improve its safeguards capacity. What specifically are some of the measures that the Nepal Electricity Authorities and ADB can adopt to improve the safeguard capacity?
I think UNIA is now involved in implementation of the big projects like the Dutkosi projects and the Upper Arun projects. And right now we have many environmental and social concerns. And to deal with this environment and social concern beforehand, so we need some sort of the technical assistance. What are the potential this economic and environmental and social concern, and how to tackle that? So if we get some TH for capacity building of UNEA, and also to find competent personnel to in this sector. So that was a challenge we are facing right now in the Tanahu project. So if ADB can help in this way, so we can prepare ourselves before we implement the project.
Thank you very much. Perhaps we will just ask one final question on this project before we move to the open discussions. Given the COVID-19 situation, what's your view on how we should change the way we work to remain agile and to remain resilient?
Thank you, Ima. I think I forgot to give some information about the COVID in this project. So thank you for reminding me. So I will just give the how we work during this COVID period in this project. Actually, the COVID in Nepal was started in the month of March 2020, when some COVID positive cases were identified in Kathmandu and some parts of the country. The government imposed immediately the lockdown throughout the country. At that time, we have the two contractors working at the site. The package 2 Sino Hydro Corporation Limited, the Chinese contractors, they were working for the powerhouse and other civil works. And in the same time, we have the package 3 contractors, KEC from India, working for transmission lines. So once governments impose the lockdown, and we are not that prepared for the residents how to go ahead. So immediately we also stop the projects for for 2 weeks. After that 2 weeks, the government also allowed to resume the construction activities of the national importance projects with the requirement of health and safety protocols. So we immediately instructed the contractor to submit their safety operating procedures in respect of COVID. And after they submitted this SOP, safety operating procedures, covering all the aspects of this COVID, this use of masks in all the places, facilities of hand washing, and also social distancing. So with this, we, after the approval from the local administrative offices and local governments, we resumed the works after 2 weeks after lockdown. The package 2 contractors started working in the powerhouse, and the package 3 contractors started the individual tower foundation works. And also we followed that we tried to restrict the people coming to the site. The new people, we, as much as possible, we restricted them to come. So in order not to mix up. And if some persons are required, we just allowed after the PCR test and also 7 days of quarantine at the site. In the meantime, we established our clinic at the site for this COVID case only. And the doctors, they every morning they used to check the temperature of the workforce, and also some of the symptoms, whether there are some COVID symptoms. And we also established some isolation centers at our project site. So luckily, we have very few infected cases, around less than 10 infected cases inside the camps, and we immediately put them in the isolation centers with the care of the doctor, and nobody was seriously ill, and we don't need to take them to the hospitals. After 14 days, all came to be negative. And after lockdown and after first phase of this first wave of this COVID-19 in Nepal, we are lucky that we could vaccinate almost all the staffs, our staffs, as well as the contractors' labor force after the first lockdown. And so when the second wave also came to Nepal, that time it was not much affected to our project site, so we could continue our work at the site. So right now, the COVID cases are diminishing in Nepal, and the project's works are going smoothly at the site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let's hope that the COVID conditions are contained and will improve over time as well. So now we will open the floor for questions to all of our 3 panelists, Reneshka, Niknasi, and Pradeep. I wonder whether we have received any further questions from the audience. If no new questions, there was one question we did not respond to, I thought, which might be relevant to all of us, which is how should we disclose information for sustainable development? And the second part of the question is how can we support real PPP projects for sustainable development? Any panelists would like to respond to this question? The first one is about disclosure, information disclosure, especially in relation to sustainable development. The second part is about supporting PPPs. Reneshka, please.
Thanks, Emma. I would probably address the first part of the question, which is about the information disclosure. According to ADB, we have our specific requirements of information disclosure, which requires all the project documents and the monitoring reports and environment and social safeguards reports are disclosed in the ADB website, which is available for the public. So that's one key requirement according to our information disclosure requirements. And how we can use this information, which is available for the sustainable development, is a very valid question. And I would try to answer, but I may not be the best person to answer. Because as long as we have this information available on the public domain, it's available for anybody, any NGO or any utility or anybody for that matter. So that is itself is one step further for us to achieve the sustainable goals, because one major issue is about the information and the data. So that's one way of looking at it, but how we actually address the sustainability is, I may not be the correct person to answer specifically, Emma.
Thank you, Ranishka, for that excellent response. On the PPP, Link Nasi, can I come to you? I understand that Tonga is also promoting PPPs and the private sector operations in the energy sector. Do you have any insights to share?
Thanks, Emma. Yes, so as we had touched on in our presentation, we are the part of the point for the battery energy storage systems is to stabilize the grid and create a platform where we can introduce more renewable energy. Unfortunately, Tonga is very limited in terms of its natural resources. So far, the only proven technologies are solar and wind here in the Kingdom of Tonga. But it presents a challenge in terms of being able to implement all of the required solar and wind that is necessary to achieve some of the targets and the goals when it comes to the renewable energy transition away from fossil fuels, particularly diesel fuel. So over the last 10 years, we've been able to complete a number of proof of concept projects and really validate the ability locally to implement and build solar and wind farms. In terms of trying to accelerate the introduction of more solar and wind, we've gone down the route of independent power producers. And really the only way to be able to achieve that is through PPP or public-private partnerships between the private sector, international investment as well, foreign investment into Tonga, which requires a high level of public facilitation to be able to see that eventuate. But really, it is very much our best option at the moment for transformation to renewable energy, which is certainly a much more sustainable resource for us as a country moving forward. Getting back to the definition of sustainable development, I think it's clear that we are all trying to do this to be able to ensure that there is a future for the generation that comes after us. And that's why we are passionate about trying to introduce renewable energy here at Tonga Power Limited and in the Kingdom of Tonga, is to ensure the sustainability of our energy systems for the generation that will follow, and hopefully have some semblance of an influence on a greater scale in terms of the transformation that needs to happen. The PPP doesn't just end when it comes to looking at energy transformation. There are also additional projects that we are investigating and want to follow the same sort of model where we want to prove the concept. And if it is proven, particularly in the agri-based areas, and potentially there are methods to upscale that with public-private partnerships. So there is still a lot of lessons to be learned, absolutely. Forums like this definitely speak to and are very helpful in terms of disclosure of the information and the sharing of the ability to create sustainable environments for development. But certainly we are all still learning and adapting to ever-changing environment that we are in these days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nick-Nasi. So, Pradeep, I understand that the Tanahu project has gone through actually a very challenging trajectory in terms of in taking off. What are some of the critical lessons that you have learned from supervising this project?
Thank you, Ima. First, to conclude the contract, even is also a very challenging task for us. What we have experienced in our case is that when we opened the bids for the major construction packages, and we concluded the contract, and unfortunately we have to terminate the contract before commencement of the works. And then we again started the rebidding of one of the package, and that time, after consultation with the EADB, we have to disqualify all the bidders in the technical bid evaluations. And second, we have to again do the rebidding for the third time. So that time we succeeded, but because of this COVID, we go on extending the time to submit their bids. So that whole process took 3 years to conclude the package 1 contract, which have major impacts for these projects. So now all the contractors are mobilized to the site, and this COVID situation is also improving, and hopefully that the project will move smoothly in the coming days. And if everything goes fine, we target to complete this project by the end of 2025.
That's great. Thank you very much. Maybe I can ask a final question from our panelists. We have been weathering the impacts of COVID-19 for 1.5 years, approaching 2 years now. Based on this learning, if we are processing a new project today, how would you do it differently this time? Maybe starting from you, Raneshka.
I think the greatest lesson that we take out of the pandemic is how we can be resilient about it in designing the projects. We usually talk about the resilience in the project design in the physical context, but actually in the design stage also, I think this is a very, very great lesson for us to think about the resilience and how we could face such unforeseen situations. So the flexibility is the key, I would say. So I think all the project officers in ADB and other development organizations, it's a great lesson that how do we incorporate this flexibility in the project design. I think it's a must for us to consider that in the future, especially in the countries like the Pacific, where remote, small countries. I think this is a key, and I think it's a great lesson that we have learned through these ongoing projects for the future.
Thank you very much. Nick-Nasi, any words from you?
Yeah, thanks, Emma. Absolutely. I think Ranishka is certainly right on point where flexibility is absolutely key, considering what could unfold in the future and what we have learned particularly from COVID-19 and the pandemic. I think from more of a Tonga context or perspective, I think we were very, very fortunate in the design of Tonga Renewable Energy Project to be focusing heavily on the capacity building aspects at that point in time when we were designing the project. And I think that that's also very, very critical when considering these projects in the future as well, is to still emphasize that capacity building aspect of these projects and ensuring that the capability within country is continuing to develop to be able to maintain and to assist with the adaptation and mitigation that will be necessary in the future as the environment changes that we are implementing these projects in. So I think that was a very good lesson that we learned from this particular project. was that focus on capacity building held us in good stead when it came to implementation of the project later on in the unforeseen circumstances of COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick-Nasi. Pradeep, any thoughts from you
I think
on how best to move forward?
I think we should be prepared right from the beginning about such pandemic, because in case of this COVID-19 and in case of our projects, we were not very prepared at the beginning, how to move ahead. So while designing the project itself, now we need to consider such probable pandemic situations coming to the projects, and especially in this health and safety management plan. We generally prepared only the general health and safety management plan, and also in the contract itself. So we need to be little particular for such pandemic, and we need to include in the contract itself this safety and health and safety management plan in details, considering all the things. As what the presenter has said about flexibility is very important, because we have to be flexible during during such period. So the use of modern technology for the PAC, and also as much as possible for the consensual supervision. So that technologies also shall be adopted to move ahead during this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. These are really excellent lessons about building the local capacity, so that especially when the international capacity cannot come forward as ready as other times, the local capacity can come up to fill the gap. But even even we don't have such risks, building local capacity itself is very important, about having flexibility so we can adapt to different situations more readily, and about using technology so we can increase efficiency, and also about the risk management in specific areas, such as our plan for health and safety. Really excellent lessons that can make our projects stronger. So I think that brings us to the end of this session. And thank you very much again to our panelists for your excellent presentations, and for sharing your rich experience and lessons on innovative actions and efforts to make the projects more resilient during the pandemic. I feel this has been a very enlightening session, which is really aligned with the theme of this forum on resilience, results, and recovery. The practical experience from the two projects discussed today demonstrates the value and the impact of strong partnerships between ADB, the governments, and our development partners. With strong responsiveness and the results orientation, the ADB and the government teams are resourceful and exemplary in pushing the projects forward under very difficult situations. These experiences are no doubt illuminating for other projects and other teams. So on behalf of ADB, thank you very much, our three excellent panelists, for your insights. And thank you to all of our participants for your time and active engagement and excellent questions. And I also want to thank our colleagues at the Portfolio Management Division of the Procurement, Portfolio and Financial Management Department for your tremendous efforts and excellent organization of this event. And it's been a great learning session for me, and I'm sure for all the participants. Thank you very much.
This ends our session for today. We will resume at 10:30 a.m. tomorrow, Manila time. Do explore the activities and resources in the forum homepage, such as the games, exhibits, and chat. You're also welcome to post your takeaways from this forum in your social media account, using the hashtag #SuccessfulProjects. See you on day 3.